It was supposed to be a simple ride home. Nothing more. After a long evening together, I stood in the driveway, coat pulled tight against the cold, waiting. But my family's laughter echoed from inside as the minutes dragged on. Car doors slammed, engines roared, and one by one, they drove away, leaving me standing there alone, like baggage they'd forgotten to claim. I called out, but no one came back. My breath turned white in the night air, and my heart felt heavier than the chill. They thought they'd left me powerless, but the next day, their $30,000 keys didn't work. The driveway light buzzed faintly above me as I stood there clutching my purse. I had assumed someone, anyone, would offer me a seat, a ride, even a word of concern. Instead, car after car pulled out, taillights disappearing into the dark. I watched as my son waved briefly, not even rolling down his window. My daughter-in-law turned her face away, pretending not to see me. Even the grandchildren, faces glowing in the back seat screens, didn't notice I was left behind. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I shifted, waiting for someone to turn back. No one did. For nearly 20 minutes, I stood there in the cold, until finally I called a cab. The driver looked at me with pity as I climbed in, brushing frost from my coat. "They really left you out here?" he asked softly. I nodded, too tired to explain. That night, lying awake in my bed, I replayed it over and over. It wasn't just about the ride, it was about what it meant. That in their eyes I wasn't worth the small inconvenience of kindness. But they had forgotten something. The house they had just left, the one with the warm lights and the spacious driveway, that house was mine. Bought with years of saving, maintained with care, it stood on land I had chosen. And while they dismissed me, they enjoyed every comfort inside it. I turned on my side, a thought growing sharper in my mind. They might have driven away from me that night, but tomorrow I held the power. The locks were old, and I'd been planning to replace them. Now I had every reason to do so, and I knew just the kind of lesson $30,000 car keys couldn't ignore. The next morning I rose early, the memory of cold pavement still fresh in my bones. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it couldn't warm the ache of being abandoned. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the old brass keys lying in the bowl. Those keys had been copied and shared through the years, given freely to children, in-laws, anyone who needed access. I never questioned it. My house was their house, or so I thought. But as I sipped the bitter coffee, a realization settled over me. They had left me standing in the driveway as if I didn't belong to them, yet they expected to walk freely into my home, raid my fridge, nap on my couch, treat this place like a hotel. No more. I picked up the phone and called the locksmith. "Yes, I said firmly. "I want all the locks changed today, every door." The man arrived within the hour, tools jangling at his side. He worked quickly, replacing metal and tumblers, handing me a new set of sleek keys. When I turned the lock for the first time, a quiet satisfaction filled me. The sound was sharp, final, like a door closing on years of being overlooked. As I tucked the fresh keys into my purse, memories came rushing back. Years of double shifts at the diner so my kids could have new clothes. Late nights studying bills, making sure the mortgage was always paid, packing lunches, sewing torn uniforms, listening to dreams whispered at midnight. I had given them everything, my time, my strength, my very youth. And yet they left me standing in the cold, waiting like a forgotten guest outside my own house. Replacing those locks wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity. I glanced around the living room, the photos on the wall, the furniture I had saved for piece by piece. This was my sanctuary, and if they couldn't respect me enough to offer a ride home, then they didn't deserve free access to the warmth I built with my own two hands. The new keys gleamed in my palm. $30,000 cars might bring them to the driveway, but without these little pieces of metal, they'd be nothing more than strangers at the door. And that was exactly the point. The next afternoon, I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway. Through the window, I saw my son's shiny SUV pull in, followed by my daughter-in-law's car. The grandchildren tumbled out, their laughter filling the air. They walked up to the porch like they always did, confident, careless, certain the door would swing open. I stayed in the kitchen, waiting. The first rattle of a key came seconds later, then another. Click, click, click. Each attempt ending in silence. "Mom," my son's voice called, muffled through the door. "The key isn't working. Did something happen to the lock?" I didn't answer. More rattling. My daughter-in-law's sharp voice cut through. What's going on? Did she break the lock? Try mine. Another click. Nothing. I imagined the look on their faces. Confusion turning to frustration, frustration sliding into something closer to panic. They knocked louder. Mom, are you home? Open the door. I set my teacup down gently, savoring the quiet power of the moment. For years they had walked in without asking, taking for granted that this house was theirs to use. Now, for the first time, they stood outside like guests uninvited. My daughter-in-law's voice rose. This is ridiculous. We have the kids with us. Just open the door already. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the front window slightly, just enough for my voice to carry. The locks were changed yesterday, I said calmly. The old keys no longer work. Their faces turned upward, startled. What? Why? My son demanded. I looked at him evenly. Because last night I stood in that same driveway while every one of you drove away. You left me in the cold, like I didn't belong. And now, you know how it feels to be left standing outside. Silence. My words hung heavy between us. My son's mouth opened, then closed. My daughter-in-law scoffed, muttering something under her breath. The children shifted uncomfortably. Finally, my son said quietly, So, we're locked out? I nodded. Until we talk about respect, this house is mine. Entry is not a right. It's a privilege. Their expression said it all. The $30,000 cars parked in the driveway couldn't help them now, because the only keys that mattered were in my pocket. My son stepped closer to the window, his face flushed. Mom, this is extreme. You can't just change the locks on your family. I held his gaze, calm but steady. And you can't just abandon your mother in the driveway. Yet that's exactly what you did. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms, her voice sharp. It was one night. You're overreacting. We had the kids. We were tired. You should have understood. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice even. I did understand. I understood that my comfort didn't matter to you. I understood that my time, my presence, and my dignity were worth less than your convenience. That's why I called a cab home, alone. The children looked between us, sensing the weight of the moment. My son rubbed his forehead, exhaling hard. Mom, please, don't do this. Just give us the new keys, and we'll forget it happened. No, I said firmly. That's the problem. You always want to forget. Forget the sacrifices I made. Forget the meals I cooked. Forget the nights I stayed awake worrying. But I haven't forgotten, and I won't let you forget how it feels to be left out. The words landed like stones. My daughter-in-law rolled her eyes, muttering, This is about control, not respect. I leaned out the window just slightly, my voice cutting through her protest. No, this is about boundaries. For too long, I've opened my doors freely, only to be treated like I'm invisible. Not anymore. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Finally, my son's shoulders sagged. His voice softened. So, what do we have to do? I studied him for a moment. It's simple. You show me the respect I deserve. You treat me as more than an afterthought. When you do that, you'll find the door open again. Until then, you'll wait outside. He nodded slowly, shame flickering across his face. My daughter-in-law said nothing this time, her glare dropping to the ground. For once, I felt no guilt, only clarity, because standing at my own window, holding the keys in my pocket, I finally understood. Respect doesn't come from giving endlessly. It comes from drawing a line and refusing to step back over it. The following days were quiet. No one came by unannounced. No doors creaked open without warning. For the first time in years, my home felt like mine again. Peaceful. Protected. On the third day, I heard a knock. Not the sound of keys fumbling, but a knock. Soft. Hesitant. When I opened the door, my son stood there, his hands empty, his head slightly bowed. Mom, he said, his voice low. Can we come in? Behind him, my daughter-in-law held the children close, their eyes wide, unsure. I studied them for a moment, then stepped aside. This time, you ask. That's how respect begins. They entered quietly, the energy different. No rushing to the fridge, no shoes kicked carelessly by the door. They sat in the living room like guests, waiting for me to join them. My son cleared his throat. I've been thinking about what you said. About leaving you in the driveway. I can't believe I let that happen. You've done so much for us, and we treated you like you were nothing. I'm sorry. The words caught me off guard. Not because I hadn't wanted them, but because I had stopped expecting them. Even my daughter-in-law spoke, her tone softer than I had ever heard. I didn't realize how much we were taking advantage of you. I thought you'd always be fine, no matter what. But I see now we were wrong. The children shuffled closer, one of them whispering, "Grandma, we'll never leave you behind again." Something in me eased. Not completely, but enough. I nodded slowly. Apologies matter. But what matters more is change. Respect isn't words, it's action. If you want those keys back, you'll have to show me, day by day, that I am part of this family, not a burden standing in the cold. They all nodded, solemn. From that day forward, things began to shift. My son called more often, not for favors, but to ask how I was. My daughter-in-law knocked before entering, offering to bring dinner instead of expecting mine. And the children? They ran to greet me with hugs, their laughter warmer now, as if they understood too. The locks had done more than protect my home. They had unlocked something else, a truth long buried. Respect, once demanded, can never again be denied. In the end, it wasn't about locks or keys. It was about drawing a line, about teaching my family that access to me and to my home is not something to be taken for granted. They left me standing in the driveway, shivering in the dark, as if I didn't matter. But the very next day, they learned that even $30,000 cars are useless without respect for the person holding the true keys. Changing the locks didn't just protect my doors. It protected my dignity. And once dignity is claimed, it can never be taken again. So let me ask you, have you ever been treated like you didn't belong, only to remind them that you were the one who held the power all along? Share your story in the comments, and stay tuned for more tales where respect always finds its way home.